Bam! Got my Kinship Gauge maxed out in one shot. Double bam! Kinship Gauge maxed out again. Hi folks, this is Tabiasobian today. Today I'm going to go over some of the best set options from early game all the way to the end of the main campaign for quickly filling up your Kinship Gauge and Monster Hunter Stories 2. Yeah, so I've sampled several gear combinations while playing my review copy for Monster Hunter Stories 2, and while there are a lot of fun ones that you can put together, and I mean a lot, I found myself primarily using my Kinship Gauge boosting sets the most, and there are several reasons for that. One is that they work pretty much with every weapon, which was super helpful for me when I was reviewing the game because I wanted to make sure that I used all the weapons thoroughly. The other is that filling up your Kinship Gauge quickly gives you a great advantage in combat, especially when fighting against tough monsters. For one, it lets you use your weapon skills, which is really important as it gives you more options, not just for attacking, but also tanking and healing in a pinch. Another reason is that it lets you ride your monster earlier, also known as a ride-on move, and it allows you to do multiple ride-on moves in one battle, which can be a lifesaver when fighting monsters that, say, use really damaging special moves. And that's because your Kinship Super allows you to not just do high damage, but also cancel an enemy attack. A good example is the last boss, who I'm not going to mention in this video to avoid spoilers, but it can definitely be a nightmare to deal with, especially if you face it a bit underleveled like I was. So the Kinship Supers not just cancel its strong attacks when timed right, but it also does major part-breaking damage to the last boss's parts, which is crucial in that fight. And so that's why you want to use an armor set that fills your Kinship Gauge up pretty quickly when fighting monsters like that. Yeah, so what's the principle behind the set that I'm talking about? Well, basically, you will need to do 4 things in order to make this whole thing work. Step 1, you will need to equip an armor with the HTH Master skill, or Head-to-Head Master skill. The reason I like this skill is because it has 2 effects. One is that it makes your Kinship Gauge fill up faster, and then second, it also boosts how much the gauge goes up after a successful head-to-head attack, especially if you do a double attack with your own Monstie. Since you should always be aiming for winning head-to-head matchups when battling in Monster Hunter Stories 2, this is like pretty much getting a free Kinship Gauge boost. By the way, I have a guide at rjj.com that lists the attack patterns for the game's monsters, so check that out to ensure that you win your head-to-head matchups all the time. I'm going to go ahead and put a link in the description. Okay, step 2. That would be to equip a talisman with the Soul Kinship skill. Yeah, so this particular skill actually makes your Kinship Gauge fill up faster. Yep, I'm sure you're noticing a pattern here. Also, this frees you up to use armor with the head-to-head skill, as opposed to using something like a Lagia Cruise armor in order to acquire the Soul Kinship skill. And then for step 3, you just need to use a mounting charm at the prayer pot before setting out. This item can be acquired via chests, requests, etc., and it boosts the amount that your Kinship Gauge fills up by more than 20%. By the way, keep in mind that the prayer pot timer does not go down in town, including during arena fights taken through the quest board, so I'm not sure if that means it doesn't work for those battles. And then last but not least is step 4, which is to bring a hunting horn with the Bonds of Kinship skill and a gun lance. So Bonds of Kinship makes your Kinship Gauge charge faster, not just for you, but for your entire team, so including allies. And then the Gun Lance, meanwhile, has special skills that help fill up your Kinship Gauge super fast if you use those skills during a head-to-head clash and win. So since we'll be relying on head-to-head clashes anyway, this has really good synergy with the set. So these are 3 skills, and each skill has 3 variations based on power, speed, and tech. So the first one is Shelling, which requires 2 ammo. The second one is Wormstake, which requires 5. And then the third is Burst Fire, which requires 8 ammo. And so the more ammo you expend, the higher the boost to your Kinship Gauge. Now normally, if you wanted to fill up an empty Kinship Gauge in one go, you're going to have to use the Burst Fire skill. However, if you use the setup that I'm talking about right now, a Wormstake should be enough to fill up an empty Kinship Gauge fully. And then Shelling, which is the one that requires 2 ammo, should be able to fill up your Kinship Gauge if it's like halfway full. Okay, so let's talk about how you get over the specific gear for this setup. Note that this part will have minor spoilers regarding monsters that you fight, so just an FYI. It's not going to have info about the final boss or anything like that, just pretty much monsters that you meet as you play the game. Yeah, so your first chance to acquire the head-to-head skill will be by crafting the Bulldrome armor. This armor comes with HTH Master S or Small, which is basically the weakest version of the skill. Yeah, so it's just small, so if you want to use some other armor, that's fine. But as far as the theme of this set, this is your first chance of getting that skill. The good news is that you can acquire an upgrade pretty quickly once you arrive in the Alcala region, which is like the second region. Here, you can start fighting Tigrex, or Tigrex, depending on your preference. I just go Tigrex because I started by playing the Japanese games. Yeah, so just use Tigrex's mats, and then you'll be able to make the Tigrex armor. This set has the HTH Master M, or medium skill, which has a better effect than the Bulldrome armor. Later on, you're going to reach the snowy village of Kuan in the Loloska region. You will then eventually have to fight a Rage Raid Celtis Queen at Lavina Glacial Peaks. After you win the fight, make sure that you don't leave right away and explore the site of the battle for a treasure chest. Inside this chest is a Kinship M, or medium talisman, which will give you the Soul Kinship M skill. So this is the other skill I was talking about that makes your Kinship Gauge go up faster. Then after that, you're going to get to the city of Lulusion, and you will eventually battle a Rage Raid Diablos at West Lemure Desert. This should provide you the first opportunity to craft the Diablos armor, which comes with the HTH Master L skill, or Large. This armor should serve you all the way through the end of the campaign, as long as you regularly upgrade it and max it out. In fact, this is actually what I used to beat the last boss. Just be careful when facing enemies with strong ice attacks, because the Diablo's armor is quite weak against it. I mean, if it's a really strong attack, there's a chance that you can get one shot. Also, around this time, as you get to the desert region, I don't know if it's right as you get there or a little bit after, you should go ahead and check the Melinx, or Cat Merchant, and then look at its selection of talismans. Eventually, this cat is going to sell you the Kinship L Heat Res S talisman, which gives you the heat resistance skill Small, as well as the Kinship L, or Large skill. So it's going to be an upgrade to the talisman that you found after the Celtis Queen fight. Anyway, you can buy this talisman by using bottle caps, which you can farm in the Everdens. Also, if you're lucky, you can get a Kinship L talisman from a random treasure chest in dens, so make sure to open every treasure chest that you find, including in random dens. Anyway, with this setup, combined with the Bonds of Kinship, Hunting Horn Song, and using a mounting charm at the prayer pot, you should be able to usually completely fill up an empty Kinship Gauge within 2 turns with a double head-to-head attack, or even 1 turn if things align perfectly for you. One thing to note is that there are times when, even with this build, combined with the prayer pot strategy, the gauge won't go up as fast. There are even times when the gauge would flash but not go up at all after a successful head-to-head, so not exactly sure what's going on with that. I did notice that I seem to have better luck with it when using a monster with an elemental advantage, as well as a weapon with a type advantage, so not sure if that has anything to do with it. Anyway, this was my main build throughout the campaign, and it worked really well. Heck, I even used the low rank build against high rank monsters, and it still did well, with the exception of the tissue paper defense of low rank armor at that point. I actually took down several high rank monsters, and was about to defeat a high rank Stygian Zinogre, until a certain high rank Angry Pickle showed up and started one-shotting me left and right. I used to love pickles. Then I took a freaking Devil Joe to the knee. Anyway, this set and build should comfortably get you through the campaign until you obtain the high rank equivalent. But that's for another video. Anyway, there you go, my head-to-head Kinship Gauge boosting set for the campaign. As always, feel free to share any thoughts or questions you may have in the comment section. Once again, this is Tabi Asobi, and thank you for watching.